In the shadowed halls of Blackwood Hall, a priceless relic, the Jade Lotus, holds a deadly secret. When Lady Eleanor Blackwood is found murdered, poisoned and stabbed in her eerie jade room, Hercule Poirot steps into a web of lies. A tycoon with debts, an actress with a grudge, a diplomat with a mission, and a scholar hiding desperation, all are suspects. As a hidden staircase and a staged theft unravel, Poirot's little grey cells uncover a chilling truth. Who killed Lady Eleanor, and why? The answer lies in the Jade. But time is running out. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Blackwood Hall. The autumn of 1935 cloaked London in a chill mist, and within the confines of his impeccably ordered flat at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot stood before a gilt-edged mirror, adjusting his silk tie with the precision of a watchmaker. His moustache, waxed to symmetrical perfection, quivered faintly as he contemplated the letter that lay upon his polished mahogany desk. The envelope, cream and heavy, bore a crest embossed in gold, and the handwriting within was an elegant flourish, betraying both wealth and urgency. It was an invitation from Lady Eleanor Blackwood, mistress of Blackwood Hall in the Cotswolds, requesting his presence for a weekend gathering. The letter spoke vaguely of a matter requiring discretion, but offered no further clue, a reticence that piqued Poirot's curiosity. "Mon ami Hastings," Poirot called, his voice carrying the faintest trace of a Belgian accent. "What do you make of this Lady Blackwood? Her name, it is familiar, non?" Captain Arthur Hastings, sprawled in an armchair with a copy of the Times, lowered the paper, his brow furrowed. "Eleanor Blackwood, old family, pots of money, widowed young, husband died in some hunting accident, I believe. Lives in that grand pile, Blackwood Hall. Bit of an eccentric, they say. Collects all sorts of oddities from the East, jade, porcelain, that sort of thing. Why do you ask?" Poirot held up the letter, his green eyes gleaming. "She requests the services of Hercule Poirot, a matter, she says, that cannot be entrusted to paper. We are invited to her estate tomorrow. You will accompany me, oui?" Hastings grinned, ever eager for adventure. "Wouldn't miss it, old chap. Sounds like a lark, unless it's one of her cursed artifacts causing trouble." Poirot's lips twitched. "Curses, Hastings? No. The troubles of men are not so mystical. But we shall see." The following morning, a train bore them through the patchwork fields of the English countryside, the landscape softened by a haze of gold and russet. At a small station, a liveried chauffeur awaited, ushering them into a gleaming Rolls-Royce that glided toward Blackwood Hall. The estate emerged from the mist like a vision from another age, a Tudor mansion of blackened beams and mullioned windows, its walls draped in ivy that seemed to clutch the stone possessively. A faint unease settled over Hastings as they approached, though he could not say why. Lady Eleanor Blackwood greeted them in the grand hall, a cavernous space adorned with tapestries and lit by a chandelier that cast flickering shadows. She was a woman of late middle age, her silver hair swept into a severe chignon, her emerald eyes sharp and appraising. Her black silk dress rustled as she extended a hand, her poise that of one accustomed to command. At her side stood a jade statue of a coiled dragon, its eyes, fashioned from some luminous gem, seeming to follow the newcomers. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings, I am most grateful," she said, her voice low and measured. "Your reputation, Mr. Poirot, precedes you. I trust you will find Blackwood Hall illuminating. We shall speak privately after dinner regarding a certain concern." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, I'm at your service, but perhaps you might hint at the nature of this concern." Her lips tightened. "Not here, tonight, in the Jade Room." She gestured toward a corridor. "Jenkins will show you to your rooms." The butler, a gaunt man with the demeanor of a funeral director, led them upstairs. Hastings whispered, Bit cagey, isn't she? What's she hiding, Poirot? Patience, mon ami. The truth, it reveals itself in time. That evening, the guests assembled in the dining room, a long chamber panelled in oak and dominated by a portrait of a stern-faced man, presumably the late Lord Blackwood. The company was a curious mix, each face a study in contrasts. Sir Reginald Thorne, a barrel-chested industrialist with a ruddy complexion, spoke loudly of his factories and investments, his manner brusque. Miss Clara Vale, an actress of striking beauty, her auburn hair piled high, wielded her wit like a blade, her eyes flashing with mischief or malice. Poirot could not yet decide. Dr. Harold Grayson, a wiry archaeologist with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, fidgeted incessantly, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the tablecloth. Mr. Victor Lin, a Chinese diplomat, was reserved, his dark eyes observant, his responses clipped yet courteous. Miss Beatrice Lyle, Lady Eleanor's niece, was a pale, mousy girl of 20, her hands trembling as she sipped her wine. Finally, Mr. Charles Trent, the family solicitor, exuded a slick charm, his smile too ready, his gaze too calculating for Poirot's liking. Dinner was served in the Jade Room, a chamber that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly allure. Its walls were lined with glass cases, displaying Lady Eleanor's collection, jade vases carved with delicate lotus patterns, figurines of mythical beasts, and intricate ornaments that gleamed in the candlelight. At the room's centre stood a locked cabinet, its contents hidden behind frosted glass. Whispers among the staff suggested it housed the jade lotus, a relic of ancient China said to carry a curse upon those who claimed it unlawfully. The air was heavy with unspoken tension, and Poirot noted the guests' behaviour. Miss Vale's barbed remarks to Sir Reginald, Dr. Grayson's nervous glances at the cabinet, Mr. Lin's studied calm, and Miss Lyle's near-silent withdrawal. Even Trent's joviality seemed forced, his eyes darting to Lady Eleanor. As dessert was cleared, Lady Eleanor rose, her expression grave. "I must speak with Mr. Poirot alone," she said. "The rest of you please retire to the drawing-room." The guests murmured assent, but before they could disperse, a piercing scream rent the air. It came from the Jade Room, though they had not yet left it. Rushing back, they found Lady Eleanor collapsed in her chair, her hand clutching her chest, where an ornate dagger protruded. Blood stained her silk dress, and the locked cabinet stood ajar, the jade lotus gone. Poirot's moustache twitched. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his eyes scanning the scene. "The game, it has begun." Chapter 2. The scene of the crime. The Jade Room, moments ago a stage for polite if strange civility, now lay under the pall of violent death. Lady Eleanor Blackwood slumped in her high-backed chair, the candlelight casting grotesque shadows across her lifeless face. The ornate dagger, its jade-inlaid handle glinting wickedly, protruded from her chest, a stark intrusion against the elegance of her black silk gown. The frosted glass cabinet, which had guarded the fabled jade lotus, stood ajar, its lock twisted as though forced by a desperate hand. The air was thick with the scent of beeswax and the metallic tang of blood, and the guests, frozen in the doorway, stared in mute horror. Hercule Poirot, his compact figure radiating calm amidst the chaos, knelt beside the body, his gloved hands hovering with the precision of a surgeon. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his green eyes narrowing as they traced the scene. A tableau, most tragic, yet most revealing. Captain Hastings, his face ashen, stood at Poirot's shoulder. "Good Lord, Poirot, she's been stabbed! And the jade lotus, gone! It's a robbery, surely!" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint sign of disagreement. "No, Hastings, observe if you please. The cabinet, it is open, yes, but the glass is uncracked. The lock, it has been forced, but from the inside. A thief does not enter a locked cabinet to steal. This is no simple robbery." Before Hastings could respond, a heavy tread announced the arrival of Inspector Reed. summoned from the nearby village constabulary. He was a stout man, his red face framed by mutton-chop whiskers, his manner brusque and impatient. "What's all this, then?" he demanded, surveying the scene. "Lady Blackwood murdered, and that jewel of hers nicked, I'll wager. Some blighter caught her in the act and did her in." Poirot rose, brushing an invisible speck from his immaculate suit. "Inspector, you are hasty. The dagger. It is dramatic, oui. But observe the wine-glass." He gestured to the crystal goblet beside Lady Eleanor's. Hand its contents drained, but for a faint cloudy sediment at the base. "This residue. It is not merely wine. I suspect poison, administered before the dagger struck. The stab wound. It is too precise, too clean for a struggle." Inspector Reed snorted. "Poison and a dagger. That's a bit much, Mr. Poirot." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his voice soft but unyielding. "The excess. It tells us something. A murderer who poisons and stabs, he wishes to ensure death, or perhaps to obscure the truth. We must examine the order of events." Hastings, still shaken, whispered, "But who could have done it? We were all in the dining room, weren't we?" Poirot's gaze swept the guests, who hovered in the doorway like actors awaiting their cue. Sir Reginald Thorne, his ruddy face now pale, clenched his fists as though restraining a temper. Miss Clara Vale, her auburn hair slightly dishevelled, clutched a handkerchief, though her eyes were dry and sharp. Dr. Harold Grayson, the archaeologist, fidgeted with his spectacles, his thin frame trembling. Mr. Victor Lynn, the diplomat, stood apart, his expression unreadable, his hands folded calmly. Miss Beatrice Lyle, Lady Eleanor's niece, was sobbing quietly, supported by the solicitor, Mr. Charles Trent, whose sly smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of concern. "Inspector," Poirot said, "we must question each guest. Their movements, their motives, they will reveal much. And the staff, too, must be interviewed. No one leaves Blackwood Hall until we understand this crime passionnel." Reed grumbled but nodded, directing his constable to guard the exits. The guests were ushered to the drawing-room, a cavernous space lined with ancestral portraits whose stern gazes seemed to judge the living. Poirot remained in the Jade room, his eyes darting from the cabinet to the dagger to the wine-glass. He examined the dagger closely, noting its intricate carvings, dragons entwined with lotus flowers, a piece from Lady Eleanor's collection. "This was not chosen at random," he murmured. "It is a message, perhaps." Hastings, hovering nearby, asked, "A message? You think the killer meant to make a point?" "Always, Hastings. A murder is never without purpose. The Jade Lotus, it is not merely stolen, it is concealed. The thief wishes us to believe in a theft, but I, Hercule Poirot, am not so easily deceived." The interviews began in the drawing-room, each guest seated in turn before Poirot, Reed and Hastings. Sir Reginald Thorne was first, his bluster barely concealing unease. "I was in the library after dinner," he declared, "checking some papers. Didn't see a thing. Eleanor was a stubborn woman, but I'd no reason to harm her." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet, Sir Reginald, you stood to gain if Lady Eleanor's fortune passed to you. Her niece, Miss Lyle, is her heir, is she not?" Thorne's face reddened. "That's family business, not yours." Miss Clara Vale followed, her poise unshaken despite the circumstances. "I stepped out to the powder room," she said, her voice cool. "I was gone only a moment. I heard no scream until we all did." Her eyes flicked to Sir Reginald, a flicker of disdain crossing her face. Dr. Grayson, sweating profusely, claimed to have been in the hall, admiring a jade vase. "I'm no killer," he stammered. "I owed Eleanor money, yes, but I'd never—" "Money," Poirot interjected, "is a powerful motive, n'est-ce pas?" Mr. Victor Lynn was composed, his answers measured. "I retired to my room to meditate," he said. The Jade Lotus is a treasure of my people, but I sought only its return through lawful means. Miss Beatrice Lyle, barely coherent through tears, said she had gone to fetch a shawl from her room. Aunt Eleanor was kind to me, she whispered. I'd never hurt her. Mr. Charles Trent, the solicitor, was last, his charm strained. I was on the terrace, smoking a cigar, he said. The scream brought me running. Poor Eleanor. I managed her affairs, nothing more. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled. Each of you claims innocence, yet one of you lies. The Jade Room, it holds the truth. The cabinet, the dagger, the wine, they speak to Hercule Poirot. As the guests were dismissed, Poirot lingered in the Jade Room, his mind racing. He examined the cabinet again, noting the lock's peculiar damage. The force, it is inward, he said to Hastings. The lotus was not taken by an outsider breaking in. It was hidden by someone already within. Hastings frowned. But why hide it? Why not take it and run? Because, mon ami, the lotus is not the prize. It is a distraction. The true motive lies elsewhere, in the heart of Blackwood Hall, in the secrets of its mistress. Poirot's gaze fell on the wineglass once more. He lifted it to the light, studying the sediment. This residue, he said, it is not common poison. It is unusual. We must send it to a chemist, and the dagger. Its placement is too perfect, too staged. The killer wishes us to see violence, but I see calculation. Inspector Reed, overhearing, scoffed. You're making this too complicated, Poirot. A thief, a dagger, a dead woman. That's the story. Poirot smiled faintly. The story, Inspector, is never so simple. The little grey cells, they see beyond the obvious. Tomorrow, we shall explore this house of secrets further. The Jade Room has spoken, but it has not yet told all. As the clock struck midnight, Poirot and Hastings retired, the weight of the crime pressing upon them. In the silence of Blackwood Hall, the jade dragon in the hall seemed to watch, its eyes glinting with secrets yet to be unveiled. Chapter 3. The Shadows of Motive. The morning sun pierced the mist shrouding Blackwood Hall, casting pale rays through the leaded windows of the drawing-room where Hercule Poirot sat, his hands folded neatly over his waistcoat. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and wax polish, but the atmosphere among the guests was heavier still, thickened by suspicion and grief. Lady Eleanor Blackwood's murder had fractured the fragile civility of the gathering, and each face bore the strain of secrets barely concealed. Poirot, his green eyes sharp as cut glass, observed the assembled company with the patience of a predator awaiting its moment. Captain Hastings, seated beside him, fidgeted with a silver cigarette case. "It's a grim business, Poirot," he whispered. "Everyone looks guilty as sin. How do you even begin to untangle it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile beneath it. "Mon ami, the tangle is the joy of the puzzle. Each thread, a glance, a word, a lie, leads to the truth. We must pull gently, methodically, and the knot will unravel." Inspector Reed, pacing near the fireplace, was less poetic. "I've got men searching the grounds for that jade lotus," he said gruffly. "Likely some servant pinched it and did her ladyship in. Simple greed, that's what this is." Poirot inclined his head, his expression polite but unyielding. "Greed, Inspector, is but one colour in the palette of motive. Fear, vengeance, desperation, these too paint the heart of a murderer. Let us speak with the guests again, and with the staff. The shadows of their motives will betray the guilty." The interviews resumed, conducted in the library, a sombre room lined with leather-bound tomes and dominated by a portrait of Lady Eleanor's late husband, his eyes seeming to follow each speaker. Poirot began with Sir Reginald Thorne, whose bluster had dimmed since the previous night. His broad shoulders slumped as he sat, his ruddy face etched with unease. "Sir Reginald," Poirot began, "you are a cousin of Lady Eleanor, oui? Yet I understand her fortune passes to Miss Beatrice Lyle, her niece. This displeases you, perhaps?" Thorne's jaw tightened. "Family matters, Mr. Poirot. Eleanor was stubborn, yes, but I'd no cause to harm her. I've my own wealth, factories, investments. I don't need her money." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet I hear whispers of financial troubles. A factory closed in Birmingham, no? Debts mounting?" Thorne's face flushed crimson. "That's slander. I was in the library all evening, as I said. Ask the butler if you must." Miss Clara Vale was next, her actress's poise unshaken, though her fingers toyed restlessly with a pearl bracelet. "I told you, Mr. Poirot, I was in the powder room," she said, her voice smooth as velvet. "I saw nothing, heard nothing until that dreadful scream." Poirot leaned forward. "And yet, mademoiselle, your dislike for Sir Reginald is evident. A history, perhaps? A grudge that might extend to Lady Eleanor, who favoured him as family." Her lips curled into a sardonic smile. "Reginald's a bore, but I don't waste my energy on him. As for Eleanor, she was kind enough if a bit obsessed with her trinkets. I had no quarrel with her." Dr. Harold Grayson entered next, his spectacles fogged with nervous perspiration. "I was studying a vase in the hall," he repeated, his voice quavering. "Eleanor funded my work, yes, but I owed her money, debts from a failed dig in Mesopotamia. She was pressing me to repay." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Pressing you how, doctor? With threats, perhaps? To expose your failures?" Grayson's hands trembled. "She wasn't cruel, but she was insistent. I'd never harm her, though. I'm a scholar, not a killer." Mr. Victor Lynn, the diplomat, was a study in restraint, his dark suit immaculate, his expression impassive. "I sought the return of the Jade Lotus to China," he admitted. "It is a cultural treasure, stolen long ago. I urged Lady Eleanor to relinquish it, but I did not act with violence." "And if she refused?" Poirot asked softly. "Would your duty to your country compel you to act?" Lynn's eyes met Poirot's, unflinching. "My duty is to law and honour, Mr. Poirot. I am no murderer." Miss Beatrice Lyle, pale and fragile, seemed on the verge of collapse. "Aunt Eleanor was everything to me," she whispered, twisting a damp handkerchief. "She planned to send me to a convent, said I was too weak to manage the estate, but I loved her. I was fetching my shawl when it happened." Poirot's voice was gentle but probing. "A convent, mademoiselle? A harsh fate for one so young. Did this distress you?" She nodded, tears spilling. "I didn't want to go, but I'd never hurt her. Never." Mr. Charles Trent, the solicitor, was last, his slick charm fraying at the edges. "I managed Eleanor's affairs," he said, his smile thin. "I was on the terrace, smoking, as I told you. Her death is a tragedy, but I've no part in it." Poirot's fingers steepled. "And yet, monsieur, there are rumours of discrepancies in her accounts. Funds misplaced, perhaps. You would know, as her trusted adviser." Trent's smile faltered. "I resent the implication, Mr. Poirot. My books are in order." The staff interviews followed, conducted in the servants' hall. Jenkins, the butler, a man of rigid propriety, spoke of Lady Eleanor's recent anxiety. "She locked the Jade Room every night these past weeks," he said. "Said there were prying eyes about." A young maid, Mary, hesitated before admitting she'd overheard Lady Eleanor arguing with Mr. Trent 2 days prior. "It was about money, sir," she whispered. "Something about missing sums. She was ever so cross." Another servant, a footman named Tom, reported seeing Miss Vale near the Jade Room before dinner, though she'd claimed to be elsewhere. "She was lingering by the door, sir, looking like she didn't want to be seen." Poirot dismissed the staff, his mind alight with possibilities. To Hastings he said, "Each has a motive, mon ami. Sir Reginald's debts, Miss Vale's grudge, Dr. Grayson's desperation, Mr. Lynn's cultural zeal, Miss Lyle's fear of banishment, Mr. Trent's questionable accounts. But motive alone does not make a murderer. We must find the thread that ties the poison, the dagger, and the lotus. Hastings frowned. "And the hidden staircase you found? Could someone have used it to slip in and out?" "Précisément," Poirot said. "The staircase is a key, but to what lock? We must explore further. The Jade Room holds more than artifacts. It holds the truth." As the afternoon waned, Poirot stood alone in the Jade Room, his eyes tracing the shelves of jade figurines. The empty cabinet loomed like a silent witness. "The lotus," he murmured, "is not gone. It is here, waiting. And so is the killer's mistake." He turned to the wine glass, still untouched on the table. "This sediment," he said to himself, "it is the clue that will unravel all. A chemist will confirm its nature, but I, Hercule Poirot, already suspect. The little grey cells, they are never idle." Outside, the wind howled through the Cotswolds, and Blackwood Hall seemed to hold its breath. Its secrets coiled like the jade dragon in the hall. Chapter 4. The Hidden Staircase. The late morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of Blackwood Hall, casting a muted glow over the Jade Room, where Hercule Poirot stood in silent contemplation. The chamber, still sealed by Inspector Reed's orders, seemed to pulse with the weight of its secrets, its jade artifacts glinting like watchful eyes. The empty cabinet, its lock mangled from within, stood as a mute testament to the previous night's violence. Poirot's polished shoes clicked softly on the parquet floor as he circled the room, his mind a whirl of precise calculations. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful shadow, hovered near the doorway. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "All these jade figures staring at us, and that scream last night still rings in my ears." Poirot's moustache twitched, his green eyes alight with focus. "Mon ami, the Jade Room is not merely a stage for murder. It is a map of the murderer's mind. The dagger, the poison, the missing lotus. They are pieces of a puzzle, and we have found a new piece, the hidden staircase." The discovery of the concealed passage behind a tapestry in the corridor had electrified the investigation. Poirot had noticed the tapestry's slight bulge during a meticulous inspection of the hall, revealing a narrow door leading to a spiral staircase of worn stone. It ascended to the upper floors and descended to the cellars, a relic of Blackwood Hall's Tudor origins, likely used by servants or scheming ancestors. Poirot had insisted on exploring it immediately, and now, with Inspector Reed grudgingly at his side, they prepared to ascend. "Likely just a smuggler's route," Reed muttered, his lantern casting flickering shadows on the damp walls. "Old houses like this are full of them. Doesn't mean it's tied to the murder." Poirot's lips curved faintly. "Inspector, in a crime such as this, nothing is without meaning. The staircase, it is a path to truth or to deception." The trio climbed the narrow steps, emerging in a dusty attic cluttered with crates and forgotten relics. Cobwebs draped the rafters, and the air was thick with the scent of mildew. Poirot's keen eyes scanned the space, settling on a stack of wooden boxes marked with faded labels. One bore the stamp of a Shanghai trading company, dated a decade prior. With a nod to Hastings, Poirot opened it, revealing a ledger bound in cracked leather. Its pages detailed Lady Eleanor's acquisitions, each entry a meticulous record of her passion for Oriental artifacts. "Here," Poirot said, pointing to a line in the ledger. "The Jade Lotus, purchased in 1925 from a merchant in Shanghai." The note mentions a legend of guardianship, a secret society sworn to protect it. Most curious. Hastings frowned. "A secret society? Sounds like something out of a penny dreadful, Poirot." "No, Hastings. To some, such relics are more than art. They are power. Power worth killing for." Inspector Reed snorted. "Fairy tales. The lotus was nicked for its value, plain and simple." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Then why, Inspector, was it not taken from the house? The thief had time to flee, yet the lotus remains untraced. I believe it is still here, hidden by design. Their search of the attic yielded no further clues, but Poirot's mind was alight with possibilities. Returning to the library, he summoned Dr. Harold Grayson, whose nervous demeanour had only worsened since the murder. The archaeologist's spectacles slipped down his nose as he sat, his hands twisting in his lap. "Dr. Grayson," Poirot began, "you are a scholar of antiquities. The Jade Lotus, it is more than a jewel, oui? Lady Eleanor spoke of its secrets to you." Grayson's face paled. She believed it held a map," he stammered, "a carving within it, leading to a lost temple in China. She funded my work to decipher it, but I found nothing. It was a myth, Mr. Poirot." "And if it was not," Poirot pressed, "if the lotus held such a secret, would it not be worth her life to someone?" Grayson shook his head frantically. "I'm no killer. I owed her money, yes, but I'd never—" Poirot dismissed him, his eyes narrowing. Next, he called Mr. Victor Lynn, whose calm had not wavered. The diplomat sat with the poise of a man accustomed to scrutiny, his dark eyes meeting Poirot's without flinching. "Monsieur Lynn," Poirot said, "you admitted your desire to return the Jade Lotus to China. Did Lady Eleanor's refusal provoke you?" Lynn's voice was steady. "I urged her to do what was right. The lotus is a stolen treasure, Mr. Poirot, a wound to my people's heritage. But I sought its return through diplomacy, not violence." "And yet," Poirot countered, "a man of your conviction might act decisively if diplomacy failed." Lynn's expression remained impassive. "I respect the law, Mr. Poirot. I am no murderer." As Lynn departed, Hastings whispered, "He's hiding something, Poirot. That coolness, it's unnatural." "Oui, Hastings, but all here hide something. The staircase, the ledger, the lotus, they point to a deeper truth." That evening, as the household dined in subdued silence, a second shock struck. A maid's cry echoed from the guest wing, drawing Poirot, Hastings, and Reed to Dr. Grayson's room. The archaeologist lay unconscious on his bed, a vial of laudanum beside him, its contents half spilled. A faint pulse confirmed he lived, and Reed's men rushed him to the village doctor. "Attempted suicide," Reed declared. "Guilt, plain as day." Poirot knelt beside the vial, noting its lack of fingerprints save Grayson's own. "None, Inspector. This is no suicide. It is a performance, or an attack. The laudanum was placed to suggest despair, but I suspect someone wished to silence Dr. Grayson before he spoke too much." Hastings gasped. "You mean the killer struck again?" "Précisément. The murderer grows bold, but also careless. The staircase, it was used, I am certain, to move unseen. We must search it again, and the grounds, for traces of the lotus." As night fell, Poirot stood alone in the jade room, his fingers tracing the edge of the empty cabinet. The jade dragon in the hall seemed to watch him, its eyes glinting with an almost human malice. "The lotus is near," he murmured, "and with it the killer's mistake. The little grey cells, they are never wrong." Chapter 5. The web tightens. The grey dawn of the second day at Blackwood Hall cast a pallid light over the estate, its ancient walls seeming to absorb the gloom of the unfolding tragedy. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the disarray of emotions among the household. The air was thick with suspicion, each guest a thread in a web of deceit that Poirot's keen mind was determined to unravel. The murder of Lady Eleanor Blackwood, followed by the attempt on Dr. Harold Grayson's life, had tightened the noose of tension, and the Jade Room, with its silent artifacts, loomed as the heart of the mystery. Captain Hastings, nursing a cup of tea, paced the room's Persian rug. "This business with Grayson, Poirot, it's ghastly. First Lady Eleanor, now him. The killer's getting desperate, isn't he?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his fingers steepled before him. "Oui, Hastings. Desperation breeds error, and error reveals truth. The laudanum was no suicide. It was a calculated act to silence or to deceive. We must now tighten the web, mon ami, and see who squirms. Inspector Reed, his mutton-chop whiskers bristling with impatience, entered, with a report from the village doctor. "Grayson's awake," he announced. "Weak, but he'll pull through. Says he didn't take the laudanum himself. Claims someone slipped it into his tea." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Most interesting. The vial bore only his fingerprints, yet he denies self-harm. This suggests a careful hand, one that planned the scene with precision." Reed scoffed. "Or he's lying to save his skin. I say we press him harder." "Non, Inspector," Poirot countered. "Pressure breaks the weak, but the guilty require finesse. Let us reconstruct the night of the murder and examine the alibis once more." Poirot gathered his notes, piecing together the timeline. Lady Eleanor's scream had pierced the silence at 10 o'clock, 10 minutes after the guests dispersed from the Jade room. The poison in her wine, confirmed by a chemist's analysis sent by courier, was a slow-acting alkaloid, likely administered during dinner. The dagger, however, had been the fatal blow. Its jade-inlaid handle, a piece from her own collection. Two methods, Poirot mused aloud, suggest either two minds or one very cunning. The poison was subtle, the dagger theatrical, a contradiction in intent. Hastings frowned. Two killers? That's a stretch, Poirot. Not impossible, mon ami. But more likely, one killer uses both to obscure the truth. The Jade Lotus, too, is a deception. It was not stolen, but hidden, I am certain. The guests were summoned to the drawing-room, their faces a gallery of unease. Poirot began with Miss Clara Vale, whose auburn hair was pinned with less care than usual, her eyes wary. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you claim to be in the powder-room, yet a footman saw you near the Jade room at 9:45. Why did you conceal this?" Her lips tightened, but her voice remained steady. "I was curious about the lotus. Eleanor was always so secretive about it. I peeked in, that's all. I saw nothing unusual." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Curiosity, mademoiselle, or something more? Your disdain for Sir Reginald is evident. Did Lady Eleanor know of your past with him?" Clara's eyes flashed. "That's ancient history. I had no quarrel with Eleanor." Sir Reginald Thorne was next, his temper barely contained. "I told you I was in the library," he growled. "I've no need for Eleanor's trinkets or her money." "And yet," Poirot said, "your finances are strained, no? A factory closed, debts unpaid. Lady Eleanor's will favoured Miss Lyle, cutting you out. This did not anger you." Thorne's fists clenched. "I'm no murderer, Poirot. Check the library if you doubt me." Miss Beatrice Lyle, pale and trembling, clutched her handkerchief. "I was fetching my shawl," she whispered. "Aunt Eleanor wanted me to be strong, but I disappointed her. She spoke of a convent, but I'd never harm her." Poirot's tone softened. "A convent is a heavy fate, mademoiselle. Did you fear her decision?" Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid, but I loved her. I swear it." Mr. Victor Lynn, composed as ever, reiterated his alibi. "I was in my room, meditating," he said. "The Jade Lotus belongs to my people, but I sought only its lawful return." "And if Lady Eleanor refused?" Poirot asked. "Your duty to your country, it is strong, oui?" Lynn's face was a mask. "Strong, but not lawless, Mr. Poirot. Mr. Charles Trent, the solicitor, was last, his charm worn thin." "I was on the terrace, as I said," he insisted. "Eleanor's accounts were complex, but I managed them honestly." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet discrepancies were found, monsieur. Funds missing, perhaps diverted. Lady Eleanor questioned you, did she not?" Trent's smile was strained. "Minor errors, easily explained. I'm no killer." As the guests dispersed, Poirot turned to the staff, questioning the butler, Jenkins, again. "Lady Eleanor was anxious," Jenkins confirmed. "She spoke of betrayal in her circle, though she named no one. A maid, Mary, added a new detail. "I saw Mr. Trent near the wine cellar before dinner, sir. He looked furtive, like he didn't want to be seen." Poirot's mind raced. The hidden staircase, the poisoned wine, the staged theft of the lotus, all pointed to a killer within the household. He requested Trent's financial records, which Reed's men retrieved from the solicitor's room. The ledgers, though meticulously kept, showed irregularities. Sums transferred to unlisted accounts, dates misaligned with Lady Eleanor's known transactions. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, studying the pages. "The web tightens, Hastings. The poison was in the wine, but the wine was poured from a decanter. Someone had access before dinner." Hastings gasped. "The wine cellar! Trent was seen there." "Oui, but we must not leap. The cellar, the staircase, the lotus, they are threads, but the pattern is not yet clear." That afternoon, Poirot revisited the Jade room, his eyes lingering on the cabinet. He examined the lock again, noting its inward damage. "The lotus was hidden, not stolen," he said. "The killer needed time to retrieve it later, but why?" He turned to the wine glass. Its sediment now confirmed as an alkaloid mixed with an unusual substance. Jade dust, as he had suspected. "This dust," he said to Hastings, "is no accident. It masks the poison's taste, but only one with knowledge of Jade's properties would use it." Inspector Reed, entering, was sceptical. "Jade dust. That's fanciful, Poirot. You're chasing shadows." "Shadows, Inspector, cast light on truth. The killer is here, among us, and their next mistake will be their last." As evening fell, Poirot stood alone in the Jade room, the Jade Dragon's eyes seeming to follow him. "The web is tight," he whispered, "but one thread will break, and Hercule Poirot will be there to see it." Chapter 6. The Lotus Revealed. The late afternoon sun hung low over Blackwood Hall, its rays struggling to pierce the heavy drapes of the Jade room, where Hercule Poirot stood poised like a conductor before an orchestra of secrets. The room, with its gleaming jade artifacts and the now infamous cabinet, seemed to hum with unspoken truths, each figurine and vase a silent witness to the murder of Lady Eleanor Blackwood. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the faint lingering trace of spilled wine, a reminder of the poisoned glass that had played its part in the crime. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as ever, scanned the chamber, his mind weaving the threads of motive, opportunity, and deception into a tapestry only he could fully discern. Captain Hastings, standing by the door, shifted uneasily. "This place feels like a tomb, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "The way everyone's acting, jumpy, secretive. It's as if they all know something we don't." Poirot's moustache twitched, a glimmer of amusement in his gaze. "Mon ami, they do know something, each a fragment of the truth, hidden behind lies. But the Jade room, it speaks louder than they. Today, we shall make it sing." Inspector Reed, his patience wearing thin, entered with a scowl. "We've searched the grounds again, Mr. Poirot, and found nothing. No lotus, no footprints, no trace of a thief. I'm starting to think you're chasing ghosts with this hidden staircase nonsense." Poirot's smile was serene but unyielding. "Ghosts, Inspector? No. The truth is solid, tangible, and it lies within this room. The Jade Lotus was never stolen. It was concealed, a sleight of hand to mislead us. And I, Hercule Poirot, am not so easily deceived." He had requested the guests assemble in the Jade room, a decision that stirred murmurs of unease. The room, unsealed at Poirot's insistence, was now a stage, its atmosphere charged with anticipation. Sir Reginald Thorne stood rigid, his ruddy face set in a scowl. Miss Clara Vale, her auburn hair swept into a defiant coil, watched Poirot with wary eyes. Miss Beatrice Lyle, pale and trembling, clung to a chair for support. Mr. Victor Lynn maintained his stoic calm, his hands folded as if in meditation. Mr. Charles Trent, the solicitor, forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. Dr. Harold Grayson, still weak from the laudanum incident, leaned heavily on a cane, his spectacles glinting nervously. Poirot stepped before the empty cabinet, its frosted glass door still ajar, and raised a hand for silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding, "the Jade Lotus, this relic of legend, was not taken from Blackwood Hall. It was hidden here, in this very room, to create the illusion of theft. But the murderer underestimated the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot. He moved with deliberate grace to a jade vase on a nearby shelf, its intricate lotus, carvings mirroring the missing relic. With a flourish, he reached behind it, producing a small, exquisite figurine. The jade lotus itself, its emerald green surface catching the light like a living flame. Gasps erupted, and Miss Lyle stifled a cry. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot continued, holding the lotus aloft. "It was placed here, behind this vase, after the murder. The killer intended to retrieve it later, when suspicion had faded. But why hide it? Because the lotus is not the motive. It is the distraction." Sir Reginald blustered. "This is absurd. If the lotus is here, what was the point of killing Eleanor?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A question most excellent, Sir Reginald. To answer, we must return to the night of the crime. Lady Eleanor was poisoned, her wine laced with an alkaloid mixed with jade dust. A subtle choice, masking the taste. The poison was slow, but she lingered too long, so the killer struck with the dagger. A theatrical flourish to ensure her silence. The cabinet was forced from within to suggest a theft, but the lotus remained." Miss Vale's voice cut through the tension. "You're saying the killer is one of us? That's preposterous." Her eyes darted to Sir Reginald, a flash of accusation in them. Poirot turned to her. "Mademoiselle, your presence near the Jade Room before dinner is noted. Your history with Sir Reginald, it simmers with resentment. Did Lady Eleanor know something that threatened you?" Clara's face hardened. "I've nothing to hide, Mr. Poirot. Accuse someone else." Poirot's gaze shifted to Dr. Grayson, whose hands trembled on his cane. "Doctor, you knew of the lotus's legend? A map to a lost temple. Lady Eleanor pressed you to decipher it, threatening to expose your debts. Did you act to protect yourself?" Grayson's voice was a rasp. "I told you, I'm no killer. The laudanum wasn't my doing." Poirot nodded, undeterred, and addressed Mr. Lin. "Monsieur, your passion for the lotus's return to China is admirable, but your composure, it is too perfect. Did you take matters into your own hands?" Lin's eyes were steady. "I sought justice, not blood, Mr. Poirot." Miss Lyle, tears streaming, whispered, "Please, stop this. Aunt Eleanor was all I had." Poirot's tone softened. "Mademoiselle, your fear of the convent, it was real, oui? But was it enough to drive you to act?" She shook her head, sobbing. Mr. Trent, silent until now, spoke up, his voice oily. "This is a circus, Mr. Poirot. You found the lotus. Good. But pinning murder on us without proof is reckless." Poirot's smile was razor-sharp. "Proof, Monsieur Trent? The proof is in the wineglass, the dagger, the staircase, the jade dust in the poison. Only one with intimate knowledge of this collection could devise such a method. The hidden staircase allowed the killer to move unseen, and the lotus, hidden here, betrays a plan interrupted." He paced before the cabinet, his voice rising. "The murderer is among you. The poison was administered at dinner, the dagger struck after, and the lotus hidden to mislead. But the little grey cells, they see through the charade. The killer's mistake was to underestimate Hercule Poirot." A heavy silence fell, broken only by Miss Lyle's stifled sobs and Sir Reginald's muttered curse. Inspector Reed, watching from the corner, folded his arms, his scepticism wavering. Hastings whispered, "You've got them rattled, Poirot. But who is it?" Poirot's eyes flickered across the faces before him. "The truth is near, mon ami. The Jade Room has revealed its lotus, and soon it will reveal its killer. We need but one final thread. As the guests were dismissed, Poirot lingered, his fingers brushing the lotus's smooth surface. The jade dragon in the hall seemed to watch, its eyes glinting with a secret yet to be spoken. "Tomorrow," Poirot murmured, "we shall end this masquerade." Chapter 7. The Truth Unveiled. The Jade Room, bathed in the cold light of a late September afternoon, stood as a silent arbiter of truth, its jade artifacts gleaming with an almost accusatory sheen. Hercule Poirot, his compact figure radiating an air of unyielding resolve, had summoned the guests once more to this chamber of secrets. The air was taut, each breath heavy with the weight of impending revelation. The jade lotus, now resting on a velvet cushion atop a table, seemed to pulse with the mystery it had ignited, a mystery that had claimed Lady Eleanor Blackwood's life and nearly extinguished Dr. Harold Grayson's. Captain Hastings, standing near the door, clutched his hat, his face a mixture of awe and apprehension. "This is it, isn't it, Poirot?" he whispered. "You've got the killer cornered." Poirot's green eyes glinted, his moustache curling slightly. "Oui, mon ami. The web is woven, and the spider cannot escape. The Jade Room has spoken, and Hercule Poirot has listened." Inspector Reed, his skepticism now tempered by grudging respect, leaned against the wall, his notebook open but untouched. The guests filed in, their faces a gallery of strained emotions. Sir Reginald Thorne's scowl, Miss Clara Vale's defiant poise, Miss Beatrice Lyle's tearful fragility, Mr. Victor Lynn's stoic calm, Mr. Charles Trent's forced nonchalance, and Dr. Harold Grayson's pallid unease, his cane tapping nervously. The atmosphere crackled, as if the very walls anticipated the unmasking. Poirot stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the murder of Lady Eleanor Blackwood was no act of impulse, but a calculated crime, woven with threads of greed, fear, and deception. The jade lotus, hidden to suggest theft, was but a diversion. The true motive lies deeper, in the heart of this household, and the murderer stands among us." Gasps rippled through the room, but Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Let us reconstruct. The poison, an alkaloid laced with jade dust, was administered in Lady Eleanor's wine during dinner. It was slow, subtle, but she lingered. So the killer struck with the dagger, a theatrical gesture post-mortem to mislead. The cabinet's lock, forced from within, and the lotus, hidden behind a vase, were staged to suggest a robbery. But the truth, it is more complex." He turned, his gaze piercing. "The murderer is Dr. Harold Grayson." A stunned silence broke into chaos. Grayson's cane clattered to the floor, his face ashen. "Preposterous!" he cried, his voice cracking. "I'm a scholar, not a killer." Poirot's expression was unyielding. "Monsieur, your scholarship is your downfall. You owed Lady Eleanor a fortune for your failed excavations. She pressed you to decipher the Jade Lotus's map, threatening to expose your debts and ruin your reputation. You could not bear the shame." Grayson stammered. I told you. I found nothing in the lotus." "Précisément," Poirot said. "You found nothing, but she believed you had. Her demands grew, and you acted. The jade dust in the poison, a scholar's touch, using the collection's own material to mask the alkaloid's taste. Only you, with your knowledge of antiquities, would devise such a method." Miss Vale interjected, her voice sharp. "But the laudanum! He nearly died!" Poirot's smile was cold. "A ruse, mademoiselle. Dr. Grayson staged his own attack, placing the laudanum vial with only his fingerprints to suggest suicide. It was a desperate bid to deflect suspicion, but it betrayed him. The hidden staircase allowed you to move unseen, n'est-ce pas, Doctor? You poisoned the wine, waited for the guests to disperse, then struck with the dagger hiding the lotus to stage a theft." Grayson's shoulders slumped, his eyes wild. "You've no proof!" Poirot gestured to the wineglass, still preserved. "The jade dust, Doctor, is your signature. The chemist confirmed it, and only you had access to the collection's lesser pieces, grinding one to powder. The staircase led to the attic, where your ledger entries showed your desperation, notes of debts pleased to Lady Eleanor. You hid the lotus, planning to retrieve it later, believing its value would fund your redemption. Grayson's face crumpled, and he sank into a chair, sobbing. She wouldn't stop, he whispered. She threatened to ruin me, to tell the world I was a fraud. I panicked. The poison was meant to be quick, but she didn't die, so I used the dagger. I didn't mean for it to go so far. Inspector Reed stepped forward, handcuffs ready. That's enough, Grayson. You're under arrest. As Grayson was led away, the room exhaled, the tension breaking like a snapped thread. Sir Reginald muttered under his breath. Miss Vale's eyes softened with relief, and Miss Lyle wept quietly. Mr. Lynn approached Poirot, his voice low. The Jade Lotus will return to China, Mr. Poirot. It is only just. Poirot nodded. Oui, monsieur. Its place is with your people. Mr. Trent, his charm restored, offered a weak smile. Well done, Mr. Poirot. A grim affair, but you've cleared it up. Poirot's gaze lingered on him. The affair is clear, monsieur, but the accounts of Blackwood Hall may yet require scrutiny. As the guests dispersed, Hastings clapped Poirot on the shoulder. Brilliant, old chap. How did you know it was Grayson? The little grey cells, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice soft. The jade dust was the key. No common poisoner would use it. Grayson's knowledge, his debts, his fear, they pointed to him. The laudanum was too convenient, the staircase too perfect. Order and method always. The jade room, now quiet, seemed to settle, its artifacts no longer menacing. The jade dragon in the hall watched as Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, its eyes glinting with a secret now laid bare. The truth, Poirot murmured. It is always there, waiting for Hercule Poirot to find it. Chapter 8. The Journey Home. The morning mist clung to the Cotswolds as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings boarded the train back to London, the sombre silhouette of Blackwood Hall fading into the haze behind them. The carriage, with its polished wood and plush seats, offered a quiet sanctuary after the tumult of the past days. Poirot sat by the window, his gloved hands folded neatly over his walking stick, his eyes fixed on the rolling fields, though his mind was clearly elsewhere. The resolution of Lady Eleanor Blackwood's murder had left the household in disarray, but the truth, as Poirot had promised, had been unveiled with the precision of a master craftsman. Hastings, seated opposite, leafed through a newspaper but found his attention wandering. I say, Poirot, he ventured, lowering the paper. You had me on edge back there. Grayson seemed so harmless, all nerves and spectacles. How did you know it was him, truly? Poirot's moustache curled slightly, a faint smile playing beneath it. Mon ami, the little grey cells, they do not rest. Dr. Grayson's guilt was written in the details. The jade dust in the poison, a scholar's choice, known only to one intimate with the collection. The lock, forced from within, betrayed a staged theft, and the laudanum, so conveniently placed with only his fingerprints, it was a performance, Hastings, but not one to fool Hercule Poirot. Hastings shook his head, marvelling. That jade dust was a clever touch, wasn't it? Who'd think to grind up a bit of jade to hide a poison's taste? Précisément, Poirot replied, his voice soft but firm. It was his knowledge that betrayed him. The lotus, hidden behind the vase, was not meant to be stolen but to be retrieved when suspicion passed. Grayson's desperation, his debts, his fear of exposure, drove him to murder. The staircase, the dagger, the poison, all were threads in a tapestry of deceit. But the little grey cells, they see the pattern. The train rattled along, its rhythm a counterpoint to Poirot's measured words. Hastings leaned back, his brow furrowed. What about the others? Trent with those dodgy accounts? Or Lin, so keen to get the lotus back to China? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Monsieur Trent, he is a man to watch. Oui. His ledgers will face scrutiny, I have no doubt. But murder? No. His crime is greed, not blood. As for Monsieur Lin, his passion for the lotus was genuine, but his honor held him to the law. The Jade Lotus will return to China, as it should. Hastings nodded, then hesitated. And poor Miss Lyle? That talk of a convent, ghastly business. Oui, a cruel fate for one so young, Poirot said, his tone softening. But her heart was not that of a killer. Fear, not malice, governed her. She will mourn, but she is free. The carriage fell silent, the clatter of the train filling the void. Poirot gazed out at the countryside, his thoughts drifting to the Jade Room, its artifacts now stripped of their menace. The jade dragon in the hall, with its glinting eyes, seemed a distant memory, its secrets laid bare. The truth, Hastings, he murmured almost to himself. It is like the lotus, hidden but never lost. It waits for those who seek it with order and method. Hastings grinned. You're a marvel, Poirot. Blackwood Hall won't forget you in a hurry. Poirot's smile was modest, but his eyes sparkled with quiet pride. The little grey cells, mon ami, they do not fail. The Jade Room held its secrets, but none can hide from Hercule Poirot. As the train neared London, the mist gave way to the city's familiar sprawl, and Poirot leaned back content. The case was closed, the murderer unmasked, and the Jade Lotus destined for its rightful home. Blackwood Hall, with its shadows and tragedies, was behind them, but Poirot's mind, ever restless, was already poised for the next puzzle.